It was supposed to be a simple weekend sleepover. 4 friends from high school had planned it for weeks, just a night away from parents, video games, movies, and late-night snacks. Emily's house was on the outskirts of town, in a quiet neighborhood where the streetlights flickered just enough to make shadows stretch long across the pavement. The first thing her friends noticed, though, was how still the street was. No cars, no neighbors walking dogs, just the sound of leaves skittering in the wind. When they arrived, Emily greeted them at the door with her usual easy smile, but something about her eyes seemed distant, almost cautious. She ushered them inside quickly, apologizing for her parents' absence. "They're, busy tonight," she said, avoiding eye contact. Her voice was normal, but the way she glanced over her shoulder made the living room feel colder than it should have been. The house was neat, almost unnervingly so. Every picture frame on the wall was perfectly aligned. Every chair tucked in under the table. It smelled faintly of disinfectant, sharp enough to make their noses sting. Emily's friends shrugged it off at first. Maybe her parents were just meticulous. They settled into the living room with snacks, laughing over old jokes and sharing stories from school. But as the night went on, subtle things began to unsettle them. Doors creaked when no one was near them. Footsteps seemed to echo from the hallways, though there was no one there. One friend, Mia, swore she saw a shadow flick past the kitchen doorway, just out of the corner of her eye, but when she turned, no one was there. When it was time to set up the sleeping bags in Emily's room, she hesitated at the door. "You guys, my parents, just stay out here. I'll bring snacks later." There was an edge to her voice that didn't sit right, but the others didn't question it. They rolled out their sleeping bags in the living room, trying to laugh off the tension. Around midnight, they started hearing it. Quiet whispers. At first, it sounded like the wind, but it was too patterned, too deliberate. Then came the footsteps, slow and deliberate, moving across the upstairs hallway. Emily's friends froze. "It's probably just the floor settling," one whispered, but even they didn't believe it. A soft thump followed, like something heavy being dropped. Then another. The whispers grew louder, almost forming words, but the syllables were garbled, distant, and wrong. Mia peeked toward the staircase. "Emily, is someone up there?" she asked. There was no answer. Minutes passed. The house seemed to hold its breath. Then, the front door slammed. All 4 friends jumped, their hearts hammering. No wind, no one at the door, only the faint sound of shuffling footsteps retreating upstairs. Finally, curiosity, or perhaps fear, got the better of one of them. Jake crept toward the hallway. The stairs were empty. The upstairs doors were all shut. But when he glanced into Emily's parents' bedroom, the light was on. A single lamp, low and warm, but no one was inside. The bed was made perfectly, sheets tucked tight. On the floor, there were small, dark smudges, like fingerprints, but smeared across the carpet as if someone had been dragged. Emily's phone buzzed, startling them all. She had a text from her mom. "Make sure the guests are comfortable. Don't wake anyone." She frowned. "That's weird. I haven't told my mom we had friends over tonight." That was when the whispers became voices, faint but distinct, coming from inside the walls. "Get out! Get out! Get out!" The sound seemed to crawl through the air, circling them, impossible to pinpoint. Panic set in. They grabbed each other's hands, trying to convince themselves it was a prank, some elaborate joke Emily had planned. But her face was pale, frozen, and her hands shook. She wasn't joking. Suddenly, the closet door in the living room creaked open. Not just a crack, fully open, slow and deliberate. Something inside shifted. Shadows pooled in the corner of the room. One of Emily's friends, Daniel, stepped back and almost tripped over the sleeping bag. "We should leave," he whispered, voice trembling. Before anyone could move, Emily's parents appeared at the top of the staircase. Or, they looked like her parents. Their faces were expressionless, unnaturally still, eyes too wide and blank. "It's time to sleep," her mother said, voice monotone. "You've overstayed your welcome." Emily screamed. Her friends froze. These weren't the people they had met when they first arrived. Something about their posture, their movements, the way their eyes didn't reflect the lamplight. It was wrong, deeply wrong. Mia ran for the front door. It wouldn't budge. Jake tried a window, locked tight. Every exit was sealed. The whispers grew into a chorus, 1,000 voices pressed together, chanting in a language none of them could understand. Echoing from behind the walls, from the ceiling, from everywhere at once. Emily grabbed Daniel's arm. "Follow me," she shouted. She led them through the hallway to a small door at the back of the house, one they hadn't noticed before. The handle was cold, metal biting into their palms, but it opened into a narrow crawl space. The darkness inside smelled of damp earth and something older, fouler. They crawled through, the voices fading just enough to make them think they had escaped. But as they emerged into the backyard, snow crunched under their feet. The street was empty, quiet again, and the house loomed behind them like it had never been alive. They didn't wait to see if anyone came after them. They ran until their lungs burned and their shoes were wet with slush. When the police arrived later, Emily's house was normal. No signs of intrusion, no marks on doors or windows, no hidden crawl space in the living room. Her parents insisted they hadn't gone upstairs at all that night. No one had been in the house but Emily and her friends. But the friends all remembered what they had seen, and none of them ever went near Emily's house again. Years later, Emily moved away. Her friends stayed in town, but every time someone mentioned her name, they all felt a chill. Something about that night lingered, a presence that never truly left. And every time they passed the empty house on the quiet street, they swore they saw shadows move behind the windows, even though the lights were always off. No one could explain it. No one ever came forward. And maybe that was the worst part. The knowledge that whatever had been in that house with them, it hadn't left when they ran.